Welcome back. And today we have a very special guest, a coaching client, a friend, and a lot of you guys know him from our podcast. He is the famous Michigan Matt.
Hey, how are you doing, Tim?
Great. So welcome to today's interview. And actually had, I don't know, maybe 20 people after we talked about you and your success doing what you're doing to make so much money and help so many people in this market, asked to have you on the podcast. That started probably about 18 months ago. So here you are.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Tell them a little bit about yourself, where you sell real estate, what you did prior to selling real estate. Let them, this a little bit of get to know you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, my original career in life was a career firefighter. I worked that job for about 18 years. I got into it right out of high school. Went to college at the same time, and one of the benefits of being a firefighter is you have an adequate amount of time off based on your work schedule. So I always had an interest and passion for real estate. So I got licensed, and I'm actually licensed in both Michigan and Florida, and used to split time pretty regularly back and forth between the two. Most of the time now I'm up full time in Michigan. I'm in like the southeastern portion, so between like Detroit and Ann Arbor, and kind of service the 3 or 4 counties directly around there. I'm kind of right where all the counties come together.
Well, so if they wanted to send you a referral, how could they do that? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Easiest way to get a hold of me would either be via text or via email. So my cell phone number is 734-673-6025. And my email address is matt@thewilhidegroup.com.
There you go. All right. So I'll have his phone number on the bottom of the screen for those of you or on YouTube. All right. So let's get into this. There's a story that I like to tell about you on our podcast occasionally, and I always get it wrong, and you always correct me for having gotten it wrong, but it's close. Where you basically, you know what I'm going to ask you, right?
Yeah.
I want you to tell them the story and give us much detail because it's like one of the greatest real estate stories ever. And again, I know I'm going to get this wrong, but I'll tee you up. Where you are in the Home Depot and you stumble across somebody who's thinking about, okay, you pick it up from there.
Yeah. So I was laughing because I was flirting around with different ways of being kind of fun and maybe a little outside the box. So I was at Home Depot, and I was grabbing some odds and ends from this one particular row, and right on the end cap they have all these signs. They had just got this huge shipment of for sale by owner, like real estate signs, had a little picture of a house on it and everything. So I thought it would be kind of funny. I ran outside to my truck and I grabbed a couple of like thick paper clips, and I just wrote kind of a cheeky little note: save yourself the trouble and call me instead, and clipped my business card on it, and didn't even think anything of it. So then, probably a week later, I'm driving through one of the areas that I service, and I see a guy out by the street. It's one of the streets with a little ditch, and he's on his side of the ditch, and he's sticking a for sale by owner sign in the yard. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm gonna spin around and I'm gonna go, introduce myself, see what I can find out about the house, and close for the appointment. And ironically enough, when I pulled up in the driveway and we started talking, I had introduced myself and I went to give him one of my business cards, and he reached in his pocket and he pulled out my business card, and he complimented me. He says, "This is one of the funniest things that I ever saw." He goes, "I didn't even notice it until I got home, and I'm going to bust out my Sharpie marker and write my phone number on there." And I'm like, he goes, "I read it," and I said, "Look at this guy." And then he goes, "And here you are." So, long story short, I ended up getting that listing and ultimately selling it for him. But yeah, that was just one of those, kind of impromptu different ways of trying to get myself out there, and it makes for a fun story too.
All right. So there's even a better story, listeners. And the reason I'm telling you these stories and he's telling you the stories rather, is I want you to be thinking about the hustle that this guy has got, and the fact that what he's doing is not expensive, doesn't entail referral fees, doesn't require some sort of MBA in real estate marketing or branding or any of the rest of it, or a bunch of YouTube videos. What he's doing is he's basically being himself, out there, in the wilds of, Michigan, and he is doing, what he's supposed to be doing, which is helping people buy or sell real estate. It's not any more complicated than that. All right. So there's another story. I like this one too, where you had someone that wanted to live in a specific neighborhood. And in order for them to list their house, they had to find a house. You know this one? Do you remember this one? Okay,
Yes,
good.
I do.
I'll tell that one because that's the
Yeah.
really cool, because so many dominoes.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, I guess this would be a little bit longer story. It's maybe 3, 4 minute story, but I do have a lot of concrete numbers around it, and this is like truly a testament to what you guys preach on your podcast day in and day out. So basically, I had a couple. They were buyer clients. They were both empty nesters. You know, post divorce, they had been leasing separate condos, and their condo leases were coming up, so they wanted to buy something together. So, I have my buyer presentation with them. We create a list. We kind of identify a target area, kind of all of the, little mundane details that we do with
Keep
with
keep talking.
our
Keep
buyer
talking.
clients. And ultimately, in our first week or so of showing, they had kind of identified the area that was perfect for them. They're like, we want this neighborhood. This neighborhood had 4 or 5 different home types in it. And they're like, we want the quad level. So, I'm kind of a bit of a researcher and a numbers dork. So I go back and I look and I'm like, there's 435 homes in this neighborhood and 73 of them are quad levels. So I hop on the computer and I punch out a home seller wanted, and kind of had some details of my particular buyer clients. I took the list of the 73 quad owners and I just dropped one on each. So I leave my house. I have a folder with 73 flyer, home seller wanted flyers for these specific houses because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any of them. So I took the week off of prospecting from the office and I committed to 3 mornings basically in this neighborhood. And I'm going to door knock all of them, 25 a day for 3 straight days. And I'm going to see if I can get one of these to list. And I knocked on a door. It was, in the last third of the houses that were there. Young lady invites me in, her and her husband, we start talking in the kitchen. She says, yeah, I actually was just going to put my house up, this coming weekend as a for sale by owner. And I'm like, I've been looking for this house for, the last week. And I said, do you mind if I grab a couple videos real quick? Because I'd like to run over to my client's house after I leave here. And I said, I'll text you in about 30 minutes with a thumbs up that they're going to buy this house. And she's like, are you sure? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm 110% sure. This is the exact house they want, in the exact neighborhood, and so that's what I did. So I took a couple of videos. I went to their house. I showed it to them. They were all giddy, and we wrote up an offer. I communicated to the seller exactly when I said I would. They invited me over the next day after they got off work. We signed all the paperwork, and we were off and rolling. So on that one, I got my 3% on the buy side. This also had the seller give me 1% for doing all their stuff. I coordinated the appraisal and kind of serviced the seller even though I wasn't representing them. So that was a good overall transaction. That was like I think I ended up with like 17,600 on that one.
Well, but
And
you did that. You sold the house. The people were okay. So that was the
yeah,
domino.
so we closed the deal, and I, as I'm thanking both of them, I followed up and I, asked for a referral. I asked who they knew that I should be helping. And the seller said, well, you should talk to my ex-husband because I know he's going to be selling his house soon. And the buyers, they were so elated with what we had done. They referred me to a family member who had their house previously listed with another agent and it was getting ready to expire. And I ended up picking up two additional listings off of that. So I had a 650 listing and a 550 listing. I held open houses for both of them. One of the open houses, I got an additional listing, which was a 440, somebody in the neighborhood coming through, checking out what was going to be their competition. And then I also picked up another buyer. So this one door knock turned into 5 transactions, which ended up being just over 85,000 in GCI.
Okay, so I went now. No referral fees, right? Did you pay? Did you
No,
buy
no
that?
referral fees on any of it. It was wonderful.
It's also worth mentioning too that you mentioned for sale by owners because you're very good with for sale by owners, but they are generally speaking. Would you agree with the statement that the number one reason that sellers FISBO is because they just don't know an agent?
I would. I would say, some of them, I think it's, kind of the morbid curiosity. There's so many shows out there now where they make it look so simple. And where I've really found a lot of traction is as soon as a property comes up, offer, obviously try to close for the appointment, but offer what I can by way of contribution. I usually offer to provide them with some of the state forms that they'll need. I'll send them the seller's disclosure, a generic PA, seller's disclosure, lead-based paint, that kind of thing. And then I'll just kind of gradually, follow up with them. So, say, all right, well, we'll see how your first weekend goes, and I'll follow up with you Monday if that's okay. And usually outside the first week is usually when I'm seeing a lot of conversion with those types of sellers. And I
Let's let's
think it's
let's
good.
level off there because I know you do more than that because you're pre-qualifying them. You're not giving
Hmm.
yourself enough credit. So when you're running into these for sale by owners and I mean, I'm from Ohio, he's from Michigan, and generally speaking, in the Midwest, if you're braggadocious or try to puff yourself up, you get knocked back down. So we have a tendency to hide our lights and barrels. True story. Yeah. So, but he's not giving himself enough credit because he does a really good pre-qualification. I'll give you guys for example. Well, I'll just ask you, Matt. So when you're meeting with these for sale by owners, how long does it take for you to ask what's going to happen once their home sells? In other words, you're trying to find out their motivation. How is that a
The
lingering thing, or do you find that out right away?
Usually it's first call. I won't push super hard for it if they're very standoffish right on the very first call, but I try to extract as much information from them as I can and stick to the pre-qualifying script just like I would with any other seller,
Okay.
even though they're posturing to want to sell it themselves. And usually where the conversion happens is either they make it through their first weekend and realize that trying to sell their own house sucks, or they reveal through our progressive dialogue, what their real motivation is, and then we cue in on the motivation, and that gets them to convert.
So let's talk about that because that could be very useful to a lot of listeners. So when you're saying you're drilling down on what their real motivation is, give me the different scenarios, and you can use some real life examples if you'd like.
Mhm. So one of the sellers that I had worked with, they had their house listed. It was an expired back in like the COVID time, and it was such a unpleasant experience that they, kind of had a little bit of a sore spot with regards to real estate agents. So they figured, the market's up. I had a bad experience last time. All agents must be the same. I want to try to sell it myself. And they had it in their mind, no matter how I tried to get them to pivot in their conversation, they're like, I want to be on the market for 10 days. I'm going to do it. I'm going to sell it myself in 10 days. I'm going to save the money. And we started asking, more questions about it. And it wasn't really even the money. It was just I want to give the proverbial middle finger to, the real estate agents because I had one bad experience. So, when I was going through the pre-qualifying, I asked him, I said, okay, Mr. Seller, in 10 days after you've, had the opportunity to sell the house, are you ready to move to, in his case, it was moving to Alabama. And he's like, yes, he's like, I'm, my house is paid for, so it's not a financial drain, but it's more of an ego thing for me, and I want to sell it. And
He
that's
did, he
one
actually
of,
used the word-
it's the
Matt.
only, yeah, I was going to say, it's the only time I've ever had a person that was real enough to identify that it's like, I want to sell this because of my ego.
I love that guy.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was an
Yeah.
absolute blast to work with. So, he ran it his 10 days. He had some interest. He had somebody who thought was going to write an offer, and they're kind of like kicking the can down the road for several days. And day 10 came, I called him, and he's like, I didn't sell it. I told you, what my plans were. He's like, come get the paperwork.
So
And he
Mr.
had
Seller,
the paperwork from my PLP already filled out. And I literally went over there and picked up the paperwork.
so listeners or viewers, when you guys are hearing him use things like pre-qualification script, PLP, these different techniques he's talking about, those are all part of Premier Coaching, by the way, which you guys can join Premier Coaching for free, or just go to premiercoaching.com. So one of the, okay, couple thoughts. Again, I'm trying to keep this practical and tactical so people can listen and watch this and like immediately go out and use it and make money,
Yeah,
You are calling them initially, and when you're calling, your goal is to essentially get an appointment to see the house, correct?
correct.
And then when
And
you're there, and then if the call goes well, then you're pre-qualifying them a little bit. But if not, you're going to do it when you're there, correct?
yes. So I actually serve a market where there's a couple like mega teams. So, 250 plus $1 million producing teams like right in my backyard. So they have full outfits of buyers agents and ISAs that are calling these people. So what I find is if I don't get to them early on the first day, they're not very receptive to, agent number 12 calling them. So I usually, if that ends up being the case, I keep it a little lighter. Like I said, I come from contribution. I try to give them something that could benefit them, and then set an appointment or the expectation for the next call. And then usually on that second or even the third call, sometimes depending on, what their motivations are. Sometimes they want to just put their house up for sale, and, it was almost like the like Zillow does with the make me move. Well, if I could get 500,000 for my house, I would move, when they live in a house full of $350,000 houses. So it's like, to me, that's not really a viable seller. I ideally focus on the people who want to transact, in the next like 60 to 90 days, ideally.
Well,
And it's a little bit of a velvet glove with for sale by owners. I've called them enough and I've spoken to them enough to where I can usually get a pretty good read on whether they're going to be like a first call conversion, or maybe it's going to take two or three additional ones. But where
all right. So you packed a lot in there, and I really appreciate it. One of the things that I think, let's start out, we already said this, but most for sale by owners are for sale by owner because they simply don't know an agent. That's number one. And number two, when you're calling a for sale by owner, depending on how the call is going, you definitely want, well, really either way, you want to get over there and see the house as fast as possible. Now, you can skip the calling, by the way, for sale by owners, and you can just go knock on the door, which Matt's also done before. And if you're in a marketplace, well, honestly, if you're wanting to really get a lot of momentum with for sale by owners, that's the move. Just go knock on the door and use their script that's in Premier Coaching. But one of the, and Matt does say his version of this, but one of the things that you don't say this right away, but this is one of the things you say to placate their egos, let's say. And so I'll do it with Matt as if he were the seller. So Matt, listen, there's no question in my mind you can sell this house yourself. You've positioned this house correctly. It's in great condition. You've priced this house masterfully. The brochure you made, the video you made, everything you've done, you're easy to get hold of. I mean, honestly, I'm 100% sure you can sell your house yourself. So congratulations. But let me ask you a real quick question. If I could, if I were to bring the buyer, and the buyer, this is the exact buyer you were looking for. It had no issues with the inspection, no issues with the appraisal, no issues with the financing. This is a great buyer, the perfect buyer for your house. And they're flexible with closing, they're flexible with all the things. You're in complete control. And this check I hand you at closing is the same, if not significantly more, than you would be able to get selling it yourself. In other words, you can have your cake and you can eat it too. You can win, and I'll take care of all the responsibilities and do all the work and take care of all the liability, frankly. And the check I hand you at closing, again, is the same, if not more, than you'll be able to get selling it yourself. So, Mr. Seller, the question I have for you is, why wouldn't you list the house with me?
Well, that sounds like the American dream. If you could do all that, I would list the house with you.
And minus the American dream part, which is very gratuitous, and I appreciate it. But that is what they say. They will actually say, if you can show me that you could do all that, I would list the house with you. And that really, guys, you think that I'm oversimplifying it. Matt will testify that I am not. 99% of the time, a for sale by owner does not know another agent, is just trying to sell it to, frankly, because it's like a help wanted sign. And if you follow our script, follow our presentation, send the pre-listing pack, the whole 9 yards, you're going to take the listing. And if you are in a marketplace where it's competitive, where there are a lot of people chasing listings, it is a good idea just to go knock on the door. I mean, Julie and I sold over 100 houses our first year in real estate, half of which were listings. And I bet you of all those listings, I could pretty much guarantee you all of them are FISBOs. You know, usually, well, it's because for sale by owners and expireds, it's so, you know, Matt, you and I have talked about this before, and it is kind of fascinating. Everyone wants to be a listing agent, and agents are willing to pay 40% referral fees for buyer leads and all this craziness. And yet every single market, there are thousands of potential sellers who have their hands up in the air right now, who with just a little bit of skill, a little bit of effort, you could, you know, instantly start taking listings and become a listing agent and be essentially on your way to having a real estate practice, opposed to always being beholden to buying leads. You know, when you run across, and you're, that's how you build your business. You build your business based on listings. You work with buyers, certainly, but being a listings-based business and being a listings-based, you know, real estate professional, how did you come to that realization that that's the, you know, in other words, be a listing agent, that's where you get leverage?
Um, being on the buyer side of a seller's market when it comes to negotiations.
Yeah.
Whenever it goes multi-offer, you know, it's not always who has the best sales pitch. It's, you know, what do you have resource wise? And there's just some buyers that they have what they have, and there isn't any ability to be competitive on certain price points. So what you end up doing is having to walk their either their expectations down a little bit or their price point down a little bit when everything was going way over. So it also kind of, when I transitioned out of my role, my full-time career as a firefighter, into just real estate as my primary means of income, I didn't want to have the ebbs and flows. You know, when it was secondary income, it was fine. You know, if you make, you know, 20, 30 grand in 1 month and nothing the next, that's fine. But then when it is what you're, you know, basing your livelihood off of, I always want to have a plateau with little spikes up above it, but I never want to go below a certain number. And that's where really implementing like your guys's you know, magic number, real estate magic number, and kind of really drilling down and setting goals and looking at your finances, all of that kind of plays together as a cohesive system that helps avoid a lot of the pain points that a lot of real estate agents experience. And and I think the only way that you can ever really achieve that is to be a listing agent, or at least have a component of your business comprised of listings, because especially with some of the headwinds that are out there now and a little bit of the uncertainty with the climate on the buyer's agent side of things, um, you know, I think that's going to create a lot of inaction, because people are going to get too taken in by the headlines or what could be, you know, when in reality, if they had a little bit of more of a listing inventory, um, I think a lot of those concerns would be kind of quelled moving forward.
No, that is the bottom line. I mean, really, if you want to know what the cure-all for the commission sharing lawsuit fears, it's called being a listing agent. Because you know what, the reality of it is there's no shortage of buyers, and there's no shortage of, you know, demand, and we're on this long-term sellers market. It's going to be this way for, I don't know, 10 plus years easily. Just demographics tell us that. But yeah, if you want to know what the cure for worrying about buyer agent commissions are, or having to buy buyer leads, all this other stuff, hey, be a listing agent. You know, that's
Yeah.
definitely the answer. So you mentioned you're competing against a couple big teams. Like, so you're an individual agent. You have, well, I think I'll take a sidestep. When you sell a house and you make $10,000, being that you're Matt Wilhide, Michigan Matt, what what percent of that do you keep?
I actually am really like frugal with my budget. So if it's not a really dollar productive activity, um, I don't do it. I don't do anything with regards to buyer leads. So last year in 2023, I kept 83 cents on the dollar.
You know,
So pretty
uh,
much what I'm outsourcing is some of the mundane tasks of real estate. You know, I have somebody that puts in and removes my signs. I have a photographer, depending on the property, you know, like somebody that'll do drone or video walkthroughs, you know, kind of a case by case basis. I do splurge a little bit on the materials that I use for my PLP and my business cards, only because, you know, who hasn't walked into a house with 100 business cards on the counter? And, you know, I want mine to stand out. And then was kind of, I've always, I come from a background in marketing. So I always see like a place with a website, but I'm using it more as like an online resume. I'm not spending 120 some odd dollars to have an IDX feed so people can like magically go to my website and then start searching for houses, you know, when in reality, you know, with as user friendly as like the front facing consumer portal of like Zillow is, people are going to look on there. People are going to look on the MLS program that we have through there. So, you know, I mean, I maybe spent 500-600 bucks on a complete overhaul on my website, and that's all. You know, it'll be just a lot of times. You know, I just want to have information out there. So when you know I am a cold, you know, it's like as I grow, I found that I need to get outside my sphere of influence, and I'm starting to work with people who I don't know or I don't have any social ties to. So just having one more resource where they could go and learn a little more about me or some of the things that I've done in the past, I found that it builds a little bit more rapport and a little bit better layer of trust when you actually go to the listing appointment and you're starting to get through it. You know, maybe my first couple of appointments, maybe I had, you know, 5 or 6 pages that they would pull out and they would want to talk about. And now, you know, when I go, you know, doing a better job because I'm always getting better at pre-qualifying and then, you know, just following the system, I find that, you know, what you say on the podcast is pretty true. You know, 20 to 30 minutes tops
yep.
is about all we're spending with
Well,
the
so
would-be seller.
let me go back because you said four things, but I'm going to really focus on two things. Okay. So
Mhm.
number one, there was a story there, Inman and a whole bunch of other people have done research on this. Basically, the average agent lead generation site generates 0 leads per year. He just said that. Hopefully you guys heard that. But the other thing, I don't know, he didn't say this, but hopefully you guys are understanding this. Because Matt is a proactive lead generator primarily, because he doesn't buy his leads, because he can go out there and control what his daily activities are going to be. And he knows that with improving his skill, he's going to get more predictable results. You guys following me on all this? He is not beholden to buying business or doing a lot of marketing and branding and the rest of it, because he knows his money is going to come from his effort. Effort equals results. Now, some people might say that, well, you can only multiply you can only essentially, there's only one mat, there's only one door, there's only one listing and all those things. And to an extent, when you say that and you think that, it's true. But here's the difference. There's, again, a lot of studies have been done on this. Julie and I've certainly done a lot of studies on this, where if you look at, and let's talk a little bit about teams, because I know you compete with 2 dominant teams and you win consistently. So when you look at a team that does $1 million, I'm just going to make the math easy. When you that does $1 million in GCI, and you look at the profit that the rainmaker or the team leader is actually making from that team, generally speaking, it's going to be about 20. Really, in this market, honestly, it's probably about 12 to 15%. Now, as buyer agent commissions in some markets maybe are a little bit downward, you know, more pressure on them. Who knows what that's actually going to fall to? But let's just say 15%. So if that rainmaker, I'm actually going to give that rainmaker a little bit more credit. Let's say that team leader is more efficient, and let's say they're charging processing fees, they're not wasting money. Let's say they're making 20%. So that agent's going to sell have their team generate $1 million in GCI, and they're going to make $200,000 before personal expenses and before taxes. And again, this is normal. And this is something that teams don't talk about. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, just have all this in your mind so you can make a decision when you're deciding whether or not you want to build a team, or whether, like, really who I feel like I'm speaking to are those with teams and wondering why the hell they're not making more net profit. If you're right in this, range of what I just told you, you're doing what everybody else is doing. Now, if you're buying Zillow leads and doing things like that, you're probably making a hell of a lot less profit. And I'll dare to say, if your average sale price is 400,000, 500,000 or less, and you're buying leads and you're paying 40% referral fees, yes, I'm talking to you, Zillow Flex agents. On your buyer side, if you were actually do a profit and loss just on your buyer side transactions, you'd probably quickly figure out you're making no money, but we'll hold that conversation for another day. So if you were to, back to the example, million equals say 200 grand. If you were to earn, using Matt's analogy, so if Matt wanted to earn, $200,000, let's just say, and he is running an 85% profit margin, Matt, how much would you have to earn gross GCI?
Not much. 300,000?
Less, right?
Yeah.
Like $250,000. Now, I'm not saying 200,000 is a large number or a small number. I'm not saying a million is a large number or small number, or 250 is a large number or small number. I'm just helping you guys to think about this. So Matt would, as an individual practitioner earning, say, $250,000 or $300,000 a year, have the same net profit as the person that has the team. Oh, but the team doesn't have to worry. The team leader can delegate working with the buyers and the sellers, and they have this business and they have all the rest of it. All those things are true. But the thing is you're going from working with the buyers and sellers to working with your team members. You're not getting more time. You're just doing different things with your time. Again, if that's the path you want to go on, God bless you. We have Premier Coaching, has a lot of team training in it. Julie and I had a team with 7 buyer agents, the whole thing. But just make your decisions with your eyes open. So as I was going through all that, what were you thinking?
I knew exactly where you were going to go with that conversation, and it's like, and that I think is the biggest like takeaway is, if you are an individual agent, yes, if you want the plaque on the wall, or I closed $20 million this month, but you only get a fraction of that, versus going out and doing less business and being more intentional with where you spend your money and really working off of a budget. That was probably the single biggest thing, was setting goals and establishing a budget, and then sticking to it. And that added at least 10% to my bottom line. Initially, I was probably in the low 70s. Now I'm in the low to mid 80s with, cents on the dollar that I keep off of my commissions. And that's just from looking at the numbers, and that's, similar to, if I look to see where I need to be at a particular time, I evaluate in the middle of the month and the end of the month, and I see how I'm doing. If I'm not trending where I'm going to hit, it looks like I'm going to hit my monthly goal, I add a weekend day. So it's kind of a pain point, with me, because I got to give up some of my time because I didn't get enough accomplished during the week that I should have. And that makes that immediate adjustment, same month that I'm running a little lean, rather than waiting. And if I wasn't paying attention to my numbers, does that happen 2 months in a row, and then 3 months in a row? And then, when it gets to the fourth quarter and you're kind of reviewing things and setting goals for the next year, you realize that there's no way, at the end of the year, it gets to be such a blur, starting at like, Halloween. It's like the end of the year goes by like that. So that's not the ideal time to be trying to play catch up. So that's
So
where I really,
you hold yourself accountable to what? Your magic number of listings, or you also said, like, we're talking about net profit. Like, how do you hold what are your numbers that you hold yourself? What are your minimum standard numbers that you hold yourself accountable to every day?
So I since we started really working together, and I kind of tweaked my budget last year on where I wanted to be. I wasn't pushing myself enough. I made just one little change. So the average days on market in my particular area is about 16. So I found it very, very difficult to maintain 6 active listings at all times, which was at my time my magic number.
Well,
So
let me define that, because we have listeners that don't know. Sorry, just hold that thought.
yep.
Magic number of listings. Magic number is the number of listings you need at all times to meet or exceed your financial goals. Basically, what you have to pay for, what you want to pay for, plus taxes and savings and whatnot. So essentially, you take all the money that you have to earn And you know that from doing your real estate treasure map, which we give you in the first level of Premier Coaching that you can join for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com. But you now know what your magic number is. So in Matt's example, let's just say his average commission is $10,000. So if he had 5 listings at all times, and you heard his average days on the market is 16 days. If he had 5 listings at all times, for sure, what would you say? 3 of those are always going to be in contract?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if he has 5 listings at all times, and it's a struggle because things sell in 16 days, these are 5 active listings. So he's going to have 3 pending at all times. So his job, he's always going to have $30,000 pending, always going to have $360,000 or, 30, basically 360 to $400,000 a year in revenue. So his whole job, listeners, is to make sure that he maintains the 5 listings at all times. So every single day when he wakes up, his whole life is about replacing what he sold, replacing what he sold. And if all of a sudden, for example, he decides that he wants to buy a bigger house, or he wants to take a vacation, or wants to take more time off, what he does is he increases his magic number of listings, because then he automatically increases his income. Or maybe for some reason his average sale price were to go up, then maybe he only needs 3 listings at all times. But the moral of the story is if you want to know what your real estate, your business plan should be in real estate, I just gave it to you. Know what your magic number of listings is and work to that magic number of listings. Like when Julie and I sold real estate, our magic number was usually between 24 and 30 listings. And we sold real estate in the 90s and the market was completely different. So we had to do the activities every single day that would lead to, and our days in the market was like 93 or 91 or whatever, completely different world. But we had to adjust our daily activity. I know our daily activity to the point where we were able to maintain that number of listings. And after, we got into the groove of things, that's what we do. And I hope what you guys are listening and you're listening and watching and you're understanding is, for some reason, especially since really the last 15 years, everybody thinks to be successful in real estate, you have to be a celebrity. Everyone thinks you have to be a YouTube star. Everyone thinks it has to be some big, stinking, complicated, multi-funnel, 14-headed dihedra or something, right? And it doesn't. It comes down to the number of listings you need at all times, because the market's going to sell those listings for you. By the way, we're not even talking about buyers, right? Mm-hmm. You're just basing your whole life and your whole business on a certain number of listings, right?
Right. Yeah, because I can't control what my buyer's situation is with regards to their ability to compete on a house that they may or may not love. And if you base everything off of your listings, which you can control, that's where I said it kind of flattens those ebbs and flows, and you have that predictable, am I going to be able to make my house payment this month kind of worries go off the table, because you always have that constant flow of revenue coming in.
And that comes from having a consistent number of listings, which comes from doing a consistent amount of doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do at the highest level, which does take some skill, but really not as much skill as people maybe think it does, And, the other thing that's fascinating is that a lot of people so proactive lead generation versus passive lead generation. Matt's a proactive lead generator. He's going to go out and get it. Passive lead generators are the marketing, the branding, and the buying of the business types. They're waiting around for the phone to ring, waiting around for the email to come in, waiting around for someone to self-identify in your CRM that they're ready to transact. Matt goes out and gets the business. And I challenge all of you, those of you with big CRMs especially, get on the phone. Don't do anything digitally. Get on the phone and call all those folks and use our pre-qualifying scripts. And you'll be shocked by the number of those people that are in your database as buyers who are actually sellers, who actually have properties to sell, especially in this market. That's what's really surprising. By the way, there's a 19% year-over-year increase in available inventory in the United States. So we're definitely swinging back. We're definitely going to start seeing a huge increase, I'm guessing, in the second half of this year. Let me ask you this. I don't know if you can do this easily. If you can't, don't worry about it. So a lot of agents insist, when we're telling them the truth, like what we are now, when we're truthing people, Matt, they try to insist that there's no FSBOs, there's no expireds. Like, do you know off the top of your head, or can you, without screwing up your camera, look to see how many expireds there were in your MLS in just like the last 12 months?
In my expireds, if I go, like, I limited myself a little bit, like I excluded the city of Detroit because Detroit is huge. So I predominantly work in the suburbs. If I just did the 3 counties right around where I live and where my office is, there were thousands. And I follow it daily because I actively go after the expireds, and we average between 100 and 300 a day.
Oh, wow.
in just the 3 counties, so within like 40-minute drive. So I'm not taking a pilgrimage across the state to chase listings. They're everywhere, and most of the ones that I've seen, it's funny because it is the same. If you see these same objections or these same issues, it's the aspirational pricing. The market's great. My house is, I want to list it for 500 because it's worth 350. Somebody took the listing, kind of walked that 500 price point down to like 400, and they're just waiting for the next person to come in with a fresh look on things and say, hey, your house, since it's been on the market for a year, has actually come up a little bit. So I can probably get you, 385, and
Stop
it
there.
sells in a week.
Stop there. That's just a really funny point he just made. I don't know if you guys picked that up. That is so true. So if someone's listing expired, like some of the best expireds are the ones that go after the older expireds. Well, okay. First of all, he is in a market, dear listener, where the average days in the market is 16. And he said there's 200 or 300 expireds per day. And so why are those expires expiring? Price, condition, location. Or, and this is often the case, when the seller put the house for sale, they just weren't as motivated. So for example, and Matt works a lot with builders. Let's say somebody, 4 months ago decides to put themselves in contract on new construction, and they figure, oh, I'm not going to be that. I'll be a little, maybe I'll let this showing. Maybe I won't let this showing. I'm gonna clean up for this showing. I'm not gonna, whatever. Man, I'm gonna overprice it. I got time. Now they're facing down the barrel of 2 months, maybe 30 days to the close of their new construction home. The listing expired. That's a motivated seller. So nothing wrong with the house necessarily. Condition, price, location. The seller was just kind of wonky to work with. Now they're the most motivated seller ever, if you call that expired. The thing that's shocking to a lot of folks is agents, especially inexperienced listing agents, are the fact that some of the best listings on the market are expired. And this is crazy to say, but it's true. A lot of the reasons they didn't sell is not the price. Matt just said it. Because of the inflation, call it what it is, that's in the economy, in the housing market. If something expired 6 months ago or even 30 days ago because it was overpriced, guess what, listeners or viewers? It's not overpriced now, because the real estate, like 50%, let's see, Julie has all these numbers memorized, but something like, well, you might even know, what percent of your owners in your marketplace have had their homes increased by at least 50% in the last 3 years, right? I mean, is there all homes have increased by at least 50% in the last 3 years in Michigan? No?
Yeah,
Except
I'd say you're pretty darn close. You're definitely in the 40s, over the last 3 years. So 40% increase, it is. It's like, you guys do reference often. It's like winning the real estate lottery. It's like, that's a great person to sit with. Somebody that bought 3 or 4 years ago, and they're a little stressed about the current financial climate. The interest rates, double what I paid for my current house that I'm in, but when I sell, you can get me how much for it? It's like, that all of a sudden, in the interim, paying that little bit higher interest rate makes it pretty easy to convert when they find out they're walking away with, 6 figures,
So
by way of net proceeds.
I was looking for rental properties on realtor.com the other day, and I came across one of the first ads I actually saw. And of course, Julie and I have been talking about this on the podcast and our coaching programs forever. But it was an ad. The agent had done a great job of explaining that the mortgage on the house was assumable, and it was assumable with release, which, listeners, that just means basically that the seller, you have to qualify for the mortgage, and then you can assume that seller's mortgage, and the rate was 3.49%. And so what this agent had done is said, you buy this house, and you will be able to assume the mortgage at 3.49%, just cash the seller out of their equity. You guys understanding what I'm trying to say here? And the difference, and the agent did, again, a great job showing today's interest rates versus 3.49% interest rate. And the difference was, it was like, I think it was like $500 or $600 a month. It was significant.
And this profitable. It's the difference between being profitable and not on rentals.
On a rental, exactly. Well, so there's just hopefully what everyone's realizing is, whether you're in Southern California, whether you're in Las Vegas, whether you're in Manhattan, whether you're in Miami, we have coaching clients all over the market, all over the country, really now all over the world. You have an unending supply, supply ready to go, motivated buyers and sellers. So agents approach the market like there's scarcity. Interest rates are too high. Nobody can qualify for a mortgage. There's not enough sellers. But it's a mindset. It's not a fact. You guys are believing that there's, a lack in the housing market, and there isn't. There's an abundance in the housing market. Matt has proven it with his success. So, Matt, I wrote down a whole bunch of other questions, but I really like how we're grooving on these particular things because it's going to be very useful for a lot of people. It's your nice practical nature from being Midwesterners coming out again.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about marketing and branding. Do you spend any money on marketing and branding, doing anything like that? Because that's all the rage right now in real estate.
Yeah, so I do a little bit. I there's a few like local events that will donate money to. I realistically that's what it is. I mean, it is branding and marketing, but I don't really go into it expecting some kind of quantifiable return on my investment. That's just kind of doing good for community kind of thing, yearbook ads, little league, that kind of thing. Do some limited sponsorships on things like that. A good chunk, like I said, I spent $500-600 on having the website kind of taken down and overhauled, and we're gonna relaunch that in the beginning of next month. But I mean, that's just a small like reinvestment into it. But 99% of what I do is either proactively lead gen or referral, sphere of influence, or past client.
So let me ask a last question and then whatever else, I always say that and then there's like 10 other questions, but that's just the way it goes. Why coaching? What has coaching meant to you? How has it benefited you? Where is the rationalization to spend thousands of dollars a month on a coach when you're obviously a very driven and successful person? What's in it for you?
Complacency. It's really, really easy, particularly where people have become somewhat acclimated to working from home. You're at your house instead of the office that you used to work in. You can make a lot of arguments that your productivity goes down. So for me, we took our formal dining room in our new construction, put frosted French doors on it, and insulated the mess out of it when they were building the house. So it's like I come in, I shut the doors, and it's work time. And then it's sticking to your goals and your schedule. That kind of push things along, and that's kind of where I was flirting with. And then when I got into coaching, a lot of it was, you have the tools, you have the resources to be incredibly successful, and you're just not pushing yourself hard enough, or you're passing some of the waypoints where you should, double down on your efforts to procure more listings, incorporate another revenue stream. Like if you don't go after for sale by owner, or you don't go after expired, and then all of a sudden you do, and you learn the new skill, you refine it over a couple of months, you get better at it, then it's less calls, per achievement, and you start to see, more money come in, then you can do more and you can free up more time. And I always told myself I would probably get into the more glamorous, I'm going to do some more branding, or I'm going to do some, promo videos, or some, cheesy whatever, to get out there more than I am now. And I kept kicking that can down the road. And honestly, I don't know if I would ever do more like self promo than I do now. I should, admittingly be more vocal about.
You're changing subjects, and I know why, because you're reading my mind. Because you went back, because you don't want me to ask you about complacency, and so you're now trying to talk about branding again. I see what you're doing. So listeners, tell you something. Even the best coaching clients, they try to manipulate the conversation so that they won't be held accountable. So that's what he's doing. Okay.
Yeah. 100%. Nobody likes getting uncomfortable, and I find myself that way at least once a month when I'm talking to Tim. So
because you guys noticed how he was talking in third person. He said people get complacent. He didn't say I get complacent.
Yeah.
How do you How do you know when you're complacent, Matt? What are the signs that you're in complacency, and how big of a challenge is that for you? Because let me just set the stage. He's very successful, been very successful for a long period of time, knows how to make money, makes money, basically more money than, I'm going to guess, probably all your friends in your peer group. You're operating on a totally different income level than probably everyone you know, true or false?
We're getting there.
Yeah, okay. And so it's easy for when you're a big fish in a small pond, it's very, very easy to get complacent. So how do you recognize the complacency in yourself? And when you are experiencing it, what do you do about it?
Huh. That's a good one. So for me, it's every week when we talk, we establish, goals for 7 days from now.
All right, stop,
And
stop. So let's talk about those goals.
mhm.
Are your tendencies to set goals that you know you can accomplish, or is your tendency to set goals that you know will make you uncomfortable?
Pre or post coaching. Prior to
Uh,
coaching, I would always set more conservative goals because that way I always felt good because I was always achieving my goals, and then I have all the warm and fuzzies because I feel successful. And then, when we started working together, it became no. One qualified listing appointment a week is not going to hack it, my friend. You need to be doing 3 to 4. And how are you going to get there? You're going to get there by picking up the phone and doing some of the things that you either put off because you don't want to do, afraid to do, whatever the case may be. And once I kind of got the push and I broke through that resistance, I've started to develop those skills, and then it becomes a lot easier, and it's actually quite, gratifying and motivating. Like, I don't, like, in this particular room, I don't have my little knickknacks that, the real estate brokerage sends you every year that says you're double platinum, and you sold 50 houses, or whatever, your respective brokerage gives out. Like, I don't have any of that in here because you know that's great, if you're looking for mantle space, but I am constantly refining and going after, the
so someone asked Enzo Ferrari, I'm a car nerd, right? So someone asked Enzo Ferrari, Enzo, what's your favorite Ferrari? And he always said the next one. So why am I telling you guys this? Because by surrounding yourself with things that symbolize your past successes, it's going to make you complacent 100% of the time, because you're going to feel this sense of accomplishment when you walk into this room that's adorned with all your, your awards and your achievements and whatnot. It's fine to have those squirreled away someplace, but the reality of this is a blank wall or listing boards that are, one through however many listings you're going to take. You have to psychologically, like, you know, ultimately complacency is just laziness. And it's very easy to allow yourself to be lulled into complacency or laziness, especially when you're already successful. But the problem is if you allow that to happen, you're going to lose what you already have. It's a great example. You can use finances, you can use health, you can use relationships. If you all of a sudden just say, I'm in good enough shape, that's it. I've reached peak health. What's going to happen? You're going to lose your health. Financially, fortunately, actually is one of those things where when you do have enough breakaway velocity and your assets are producing, more little baby assets for you that are then multiplying, making more little baby assets for you. Well, then you can actually have some financial, not complacency, you still have to monitor it, but your money actually can start growing for you and compounding, right? But yeah, your relationship's the same thing. So the moral of the story is that it's very easy, especially when you're a big fish in a small pond, or even a medium fish in a medium pond, to become complacent. And then you lose out on life, because you don't lose days or weeks, you lose years, you could lose decades. And the older you get, and I'm going to say this, and I can get away with saying this because I'm from Ohio, especially if you're from the Midwest, when you reach about 40, 50 years old, there's almost this expectation that you've peaked. It's not that way when you go to different markets or different parts of the world. You've done it. Congratulations. It's not, people don't say that to you, but there's this little bit of social. When are you going to take some logs off the fire, stop and smell the roses, and people say all these things. And so one of the things that I always say to Matt, and I'm saying it to all of you as well, is like, if you were to take a Matt Wilhide and you were to drop a Matt Wilhide in a marketplace where the average sale price was $5 million, not only would he have to sell less, but he would, he has the capacity to do whatever the hell he wanted. If he locked into that type of opportunity, he would. So there are so many people across the country that some of the best agents are the Midwestern agents because they're used to having to do a lot of transactions. But in Matt's case, the way he gets out of complacency is he has to set bigger and bigger goals, goals that make him uncomfortable. And when I ask him to set a big goal, he'll oftentimes, it'll take him a week to set whatever the goal is, because he knows when he sets what it's going to be, he's going to actually go after it. But lack of exposure, that's the biggest problem that most people have. And it's true throughout your life, no matter where you are in the financial, where you are on the ladder, right? Lack of exposure is going to lead to complacency. So if you're surrounded by the same thing every single day and you're never getting out of your marketplace, he just got back from a really nice cruise, right? And you're not doing things that are really going to expand your thinking, you're going to be lulled into complacency. It's our natural state. Society is going to reinforce it. Your family will reinforce it. Your friends will reinforce it. But the one regret you're going to have, and this is definitely true, is the older you get, the more you're going to realize you wish you would have. We're talking about earning money, but why is he earning money? It's from the money in which he basically funds his life, and he spoils his family, and he has more experiences. That's the whole damn point of the money. Once you're past the need for financial security, what are you thinking, Matt? Did I motivate you there?
Yeah, I'm thinking 100%. Like my high school age daughter is finishing up a 10-day trip to Italy and Greece. So she comes back on Sunday, and and that's one of the questions I asked her. I said, so what do you think, being outside the country like this and seeing how the other people live? And she's like, it's crazy. She's like, I want to do it again. Sent me the picture. She's in Florence. She touched the pig's nose, and if you touch the pig's nose, this little statue in the town square, you'll always come back to Florence, is what they say. They got a little scribe underneath it or whatever. So just seeing that in her and helping kind of instill that in her is, you don't know what you don't know, and if you never get outside your little geographic area, whether it be a city, a state, a part of the country, you never experience anything outside that bubble, you don't know what you are missing out on and or are capable of.
It's the Social Security, like you guys can go to the website, Social Security Administration's website, and research this yourself, or just Google it. But most people are born and die within the same 25-mile radius, right? Here's the hospital you were born in. Probably you're going to be buried someplace along this 25-mile radius. It's because people never get outside, even in this world where, everyone thinks, so everything's interconnected and the world feels so much more, smaller, because people still stay with that same little bubble. It's not because of financial reasons. Everyone was going to say, well, travel's expensive. That's true. But if you really wanted to go to Florence and touch the pig's nose, you could do it, right? It's not that expensive. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So the moral of the story, listeners, is you got to do your best. Like, so what's your attitude on media? Like, how much news and other forms of static do you allow to enter into your cerebral?
I get cable for the NFL football season.
Yeah. Right. I get it.
So other than that, I was very, very limited on the media. Like, I couldn't tell you, what's going on, wherever, outside of maybe like if I get on and, check Facebook or something like that, there might be like a headline that's up, but that's about the exposure, and odds are I'm not going to click on it. And what I found is, you guys recommended it. I gave it a try, and going media free, it's just like, especially in today's climate where everybody's worried about a million different things, if you're not worrying about a million and one things, it's that one less thing makes life a little bit easier. And and that kind of helps play into the motivation, is it's like, if I'm not just sitting around thinking about everything that's bad going on around me, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to get up and go do some good, help some people sell their houses and get to where they want to go.
You have to be passionate about real estate to be successful about real estate. Is passion like a thing that's required?
I don't think so, but I think it definitely plays into how successful you could be. Energy and enthusiasm goes a long way, particularly when you're dealing with seller clients. if you come in, you believe in the product, you have a good, system that's kind of either you upsell or it sells itself just organically the way it's created. That has a really good like compounding effect. If you weren't as passionate about it, it was just a job, I think that would kind of spill over in how you present or how you speak. It,
So have,
if you
right,
were
I
doing a
heard,
job you hated, it's like, you can walk into an office building and tell which people hate their job.
have passion for helping people, because that's ultimately how all of us are hardwired, and be passionate for the results that you get from helping people accomplish their goals, right? And the helping people
Absolutely.
part is buying and selling real estate. But if you don't have to be passionate about buying and selling real estate, but you should be in tune with the fact that your highest and truest purpose on this planet is to be of service to other people. And then be passionate for the things that you're able to. Did you see a bunch of balloons all of a sudden over
I,
your face? Was that
I
you?
I did. I think somebody sent me a text and it said something about a birthday, and I think that's why the
Oh,
balloons went up.
that was awesome. Yeah, but be passionate for the being able to go to Florence and touching the pig's nose. Be passionate for the time you can spend off with your family. Be passionate for the fact that he just paid for his family to go on a great cruise. Or it was just you and your wife, wasn't it? Now that I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
We
so
left them at home.
be passionate for what comes as a result of you having helped other people accomplish their goals. And I actually have to get to another interview. So Matt, you're an incredible agent. You are drilled down. You're prototypical of a agent who always has that people don't like. You're the type of agent that you're not braggadocious. You're not trying to get a lot of attention. You're not trying to be a YouTuber, an Instagram star. You're just keeping your head down. You're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your family. You're taking care of your clients, and you're growing rich slowly. And I really respect that, because at the end of the day, everyone should dial into the way he thinks, the way Matt thinks, because it's going to, your probability of winning at the highest levels following that approach is so much more likely than looking for easy buttons or shortcuts or all these other things that suck away all your profit. So hopefully that resonates with everyone. So Matt, if someone wants to send you a referral or get a hold of you, how can they do so?
Like I said, at the top of the show, either text or email. My text is 734-673-6025, or Matt, MATT, at thewilhidegroup.com. And I'll send that to Tim so he can drop it in the notes.
I got it, dude. Come on now.
I
All
know.
right. So Matt, thank you very much for being our guest for today's interview. I certainly appreciate it. And I salute you. And yeah, I'm gonna leave this one thing because I have to get another Zoom. But if you are trying to think about what to do with this information from today, obviously join Premier Coaching at premiercoaching.com. You can join for free for 30 days. But I want you all to ask yourself this one question. It's 12 months from now, and we're all sitting together. It's Matt, me, you, and we're sitting together someplace. Let's call it a beach in Puerto Rico. And you're asking yourself, what are the 3 things you accomplished in the last 12 months that you're most proud of? You have to clearly define what those things are. And maybe it's saving $100,000. Maybe it's having gone on a romantic cruise with your wife. Maybe it's having sent your daughter to Italy and paid for cash for it. Maybe it's having whatever. But define what those things are, but be very, very careful of not falling into complacency, of setting the bar too low for you. So for example, if you're wanting to say, well, I want to, go on the same cruise we go to every year. You got to go on a Ritz-Carlton cruise, or do something that's going to be far more, that's going to force you to go to the next level. Because by going to the next level in your head, allowing yourself to have a bigger, fuller life and better, fuller experiences, that's going to open the door for you to start being a service to more people. In order for you to be a service to more people, you're going to have to improve your skills. So all of a sudden, you close the loop. I want to have this bigger, fuller, rich life. I want to be of service to other people. Now I have to be a proactive lead generator and improve my skills. That's the wash, rinse, repeat. That's the cycle. If you stay on it, your potential is unlimited real estate and life in general. So Matt, thank you for personifying that. And thank you for being our guest this week. I certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
You too. Bye.